night is the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another night here on the Rangers Journal podcast. I'm joined by Ryan, Ross, and Billy here as we're going to take a deeper look at Russell Martin, the now obviously confirmed Rangers manager. He's been on post now for what feels like a very long sort of 12, 11, 13 days that we're rolling on to. Well, the 13 days come tomorrow. So, Ryan, I'll start with you first. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. All right. Big week ahead, I'm sure, for the Teddy Bears, so eagerly looking forward to it.
And Ross, how you doing yourself?
I'm good, Jock. Thanks for having me on, pal. Yeah, as Ryan says, I think we're all kind of refreshing pages on, wherever you get your news info from, and hoping for sort of glimmers of rumours and transfers here and there. I do feel at this time, though, people pry on that and they just stick a load of rubbish out there just for clicks and for attention, but not that I'd ever do anything like that. But I'm good, Jock. Thank you for having me on again.
And Billy, how are you doing, mate?
I'm okay, mate. I'm admiring Ryan's new top. I think it does looks like a belter of a top, Ryan. So, yeah, I think I will wait. The Pro one not out yet. Is that what you were saying? But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting hold of it.
No, I dropped by the stadium. I was in and out in just a few minutes. I only went downstairs in Edmiston House and just obviously found my size, which will not be revealed. But just grabbed it, paid for it, ran out the door again, gave my £80 donation to the football club, and I'm really happy with it. It's a good one.
Good man.
Right, we'll just get straight into it then. Style of play, something that us Rangers fans have been crying out for probably now for the last three managers. I think we're safe to say it's the case. Russell Martin certainly has that by spades, by bucket loads. It's what he's built his career on so far, starting down at MK Dons, then Swansea, then Southampton. Ryan, do you think this style of play that he has, do you think it's going to cut it up here in Scotland?
Well, it's just if we've got the patience to let it cut it. I think the thing with it, he's very much 1-0 down with a large section of our supporters where, there was so many people that didn't want him. I think we've seen that, there's 90% polls against him getting the manager's job. So yeah, he's got a lot to prove, and he's got to prove it very quickly. I think overall, it could work. I mean, the whole thing about it being a possession-based system is that your opposition can't score if you've got the ball. If we pin teams back, I think the whole thing you were starting to see towards the end of last season, the teams weren't actually coming out and playing the low block. They were actually coming out and almost attacking us rather than just, defending against us, which is what we've seen in years gone by. So if the whole thing is about high pressing and aggressive format and you're trying to pin the teams into the last third, all for it, as long as we sort out the other problems. But he needs to be given a lot of money to be able to build that, because I think there's so many players in the building just now that just aren't suitable for what he's looking to do. So he needs financial backing to be able to achieve it.
Ross, I haven't really heard your input on the appointment yet. I don't think you've been on. What was your thoughts when it first got announced?
I think, like nearly all Rangers fans, very underwhelming. I think we were all, when it was a two-horse race, we were probably all in the sort of Ancelotti camp. I think that seemed like an exciting appointment, one with a kind of, the future in mind. But I think, like everyone else, I've had time to reflect and digest it and hear him speak. And look, we're not getting out of this. The fact is that he had a team that performed very poorly in the Premier League. However, you strip that back and you think who else has been in similar positions, where you look at Vincent Kompany, who's now the Bayern Munich manager, who has a very similar style of play, dominant on the ball. And I think one of the key things is from a team that is dominant naturally. So Bayern Munich being dominant in that league, Rangers being dominant in our league, perhaps it is that these managers have been in the wrong club or the wrong setup, where actually they're key. You think if Pep went to say, I don't know, Norwich, if Norwich were in the Prem, or someone that's gone down from the Premier League, Ipswich, I don't think he'd be able to play that same way. So I think part of it is finding the right manager for the games that we will be playing week in, week out, in which we will be dominant, we will be aggressive on the ball, and making that work, because that's where we've slipped up. I think Ibrox this year has been a real difficult place for us to try and play. And Ryan, correctly pulled out a few reasons why there. The teams would come at us. We didn't know what was going on. We were sluggish on the ball. We weren't cutting enough in our passes. Part of that's down to quality, but part of that's down to the direction. So when you reflect on it a bit more and actually look a bit deeper into potentially why they've brought him on board, it does make sense. I can see the logic behind it. Going back, I guess, to your question on Ryan, I think it's, for listeners out there, what is his style of play? It's very dominant. It's possession based. He looks at stats like most running. He looks at stats at like most passes in the final third. They're all things that we kind of do need. I think what we see a bit more as a conversion, because clearly where we've had the ball for long periods of time, we haven't had that cutting edge. I'm hoping Russell Martin comes in and has that ability to unpick that lock, the low block, the difficult games where it's got to 65 minutes and it's 0-0 or 1-0 down or whatever it would be. And I just want him to find that cutting edge, because I think that's the thing that's really been missing for me.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when you're talking about stats and possession-based football. Us as fans, that's the way modern football is, and we need to sort of accept that. And I know there's no use having all the ball, possession of the ball, if you don't do something at their end of the pitch with it. Billy, do you think you'd be able to unlock that? Because majority of the games we do, we have the ball most of the time, and we're dominant in all the areas of the field. It's just that we're sloppy at one end, and then we're either poor in the final third, or we don't take the chances that we ought to.
Well, I guess that's the question, mate, because I'm hearing an awful lot about Russell Martin's philosophy being possession-based, and I feel like that's not really been our problem. We've had most possession for, the whole time I've been watching Rangers. We've had the majority of possession, and against pretty much all the other teams in the league. It's what is he going to do differently than these previous managers? Let's go the last three at least. What's he going to be able to do differently? We heard with Clement, for instance, that he liked to get to the byline, and his players get to the byline and cut it back, and that's how he would break the low block. But we've very rarely seen it, so he wasn't coaching that. So as much as I think Russell's been speaking very well. I'd like to know what his plans are to actually break down the low block, because the problem wasn't that we had too much possession with these previous managers. It was we didn't really either have the players, or we didn't have the coaching or the training to break that down. So what's he going to do?
That's it. I think a big part of this for me is obviously going to be the intake of players that we're going to have, or we're going to see. Hopefully a good influx before pre-season starts, because it's the 26th of June, so there's still a brief gap between now and then. So we're going to get all the rumours under the sun and all sorts of clickbait nonsense come out. I think, looking at obviously the chat, there's a lot of people here throwing players' names out, and there are also a lot of people saying about championship rejects. Ryan, do you think we are going to just have to sort of ride this roller coaster of easy links from ex-players that's played under him, or players from that sort of league, the championship?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a silly season. There'll be certain journalists and certain agents that Rangers will be in their mouth every single minute of every single day, because people know that we're in the market for a rebuild. We are going through unfortunately another squad restructure. We're expecting a lot of people in and a lot of people out, and we're led to believe there's a few quid to spend on it. Then Rangers will be getting used very often as leverage, where if somebody's sniffing about a player, Rangers might not be interested or even near the guy, but if somebody's sniffing about a player, middle range championship guy, not asking for a lot of money, who might have played under Russell Martin, or he's certainly been Russell Martin's eye, straight away the agent will be saying Rangers are interested in him, to create the urgency amongst the other teams to try and sign the player up before they think we come and grab him. So our name will be all over the press and all over social media for the whole summer, and we've hopefully just got to filter out the BS and just wait and see and trust in the process. And the guys that are there, you get, is it Prunty, the guy's name that's coming out next to Ferdy? Yeah. So I'd imagine they're going to have, a preferred candidate. They're going to have a backup, and probably even a further backup after that, a list of players that we'll be looking at. So just got to trust in the process and wait and see what happens.
Ross, there's a lot of people in here in the chats here talking about fitness. Do you think that's going to be a key issue that he's going to target? Do you think we've been unfit over the last couple of seasons? Have we looked unfit, do you think, under certain managers?
That's a great question. I guess it's a different type of fitness, right? You're asking them to do a different thing. And I think that's what Russell Martin's going to bring in. He's going to bring them in to do a different job. You look at some of the when top managers. I'm talking about, Pep and Klopp and even Slot, who's gone in. They need their players to be the fittest on the pitch. They need them to be the running a lot more than others. I guess with that, you need depth in the squad. So there's a bit of a watch out there because we clearly don't have that. But I think it's a different type of fitness. It's not I can run 90 minutes and I can make a box to box run like a Gerrard or whoever would have done that. It's not about that. It's about being clever with your movement and working together and being really collaborative in the way that you do close down players and drive them to make mistakes or pass out or whatever it would be. That's how we have to get the team working. We saw it in patches. I'm not going to say that we haven't, because we've seen it at times when we've worked really well. I think some of the European games is when we've been at our best, and actually a lot of those games, Dessers was leading the line, and he probably doesn't get he doesn't do it all the time, but I think in some of those games he has actually pressed really well from the front. I remember the game specifically. I think Černý was playing more of a sort of number 10 role. It might have been away in Fenerbahce, actually. I think it was. Yeah. And Černý was playing a little more in. And I thought we really closed them down at the back brilliantly in that game. So, look, we've definitely got an ability to do it. I just think the players are human like anyone. You can't just flick a switch on them and suddenly they'll be able to do a certain thing. I think Russell Martin needs to come in. First of all, he needs to build the trust of the players, build those one-to-one relationships, which clearly is one of his key attributes. And then after that, he'll try and work at getting them to buy into this system and just live and breathe that every day. I don't like mention it. Well, I think I probably can mention him now. He's out of a job. But Ange was doing the same. Every single training session, it was scenario after scenario after scenario after scenario of the same thing, same working. And if you took one player out, you drop another in the same position. They were asked to do the same thing. So that's clearly the route that Rangers have gone down. And look, it's brave. It's bold. I'll give it that. It really is, because you can be undone. I know we've heard from a lot of fans, Southampton fans and whatnot, saying, look, you will lose goals when playing out from the back. And what does that even mean, Andy? What does that even mean? Right. Anyway, lost my train of thought. Look, the Southampton fans have said you will lose goals from playing out from the back, and obviously that's frustrating. I think we have to back this guy over a long period of time. I just think that's the way it is. I think that's what the owners will bring, a calmness and a non-reactionary mindset to it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. No doubt about that.
Billy, there's a couple of questions in here regarding transfer targets. One was aimed at Ryan, but I'm going to throw it towards you here. Just a bit of comment engagement. Ryan thinks Nathan Patterson on loan, and if we get swapped for Dio as part of the deal, is that a sort of, could you put that down as a Russell Martin signing, do you think?
I mean, it's like Nathan Patterson, but it just feels like the lazy link, doesn't it? He's been here before, and he was Tav's understudy, and that's where I don't feel we'd be linked to him if it wasn't for that. If he was just another, say he was English and started down there, I don't think we'd be linked to him. But I personally would like him back. I also want to keep a hold of Dio though, so it's not really I don't know if it's so. The thing, I'll bring it back out of this question. The thing we're shopping in these English markets is we don't tend to get value for money. So if we are swapping or using one of our kind of possible guys is going to make us some money in the future to sweeten a deal to bring back Nathan Patterson, is he really that much better than someone we can get from Eastern Europe, for instance, or another market? I'm just putting that out there. Are we really just looking as far as England? Because I feel that's been a problem when you look at your Ben Davies. Those type of players, they don't come up here and they haven't come up here and done particularly well. So I'm also wanting to know how much influence Russell Martin's going to have on the transfer targets. Is he going to be suggesting some names and they're going to go and work on it, or are they going to be bringing players to him and go, you're the coach, this is who we've got, train them and train them to play a specific style? So it'd be interesting to see when the first few signings start to come in, if there's any kind of, paw prints of Russell Martin on them, or they're purely people that have came from the scouting that these guys have done before, taking over the club.
Bill, if I can jump in there, I did hear when when they were first doing the initial interview with Thelwell and Stewart and Martin, I think it was Thelwell that was asked the question, how are we going to go about our recruitment? You know, is it going to be, it comes from the top and then, you know, that's what it is. And they said, look, no, we're going to sit down together and work through it. But I think it's a good point. I think it's very, yeah, it'll be really interesting. And interestingly enough, you look at some of the targets that we are rumoured to be going after now, Turgerman and some of the other ones, they have been a rumour for Rangers for a while, which makes me think there's been something in there, maybe contact before, maybe, you know, feelers being put out. So it feels as though those players have already been targeted. But you start to look around and you think, well, who is that? Who's still there now that was that put those rumours in place? You know, you got to think it was Coppin. Maybe he's handed over the reins of those ones. Who knows? But yeah, it's an interesting concept nonetheless.
I'm still here, guys. My camera's playing up here, so just
just
in case you think I've up and disappeared. As you touched on, Ross, there, they did say it would be a collaborative approach. Now, you'd like to think Russell Martin's going to come in here with a dossier of some kind or some sort of, you know, this is what I've seen down in the Premier League. This is what I've seen down in the Championship. You know, the players that we should be obviously be looking at. Ryan, goalkeepers. I think, as we touched on earlier, we are going to have to expect to lose goals from playing out at the back. Somebody, I've seen it in the chat here, and I did see it floating about Twitter earlier on about Ramsdale being a potential link. I think he's probably out of our price range, I think, unless the 49ers are going to come in here and throw more than they thought they would. In terms of transfer kitty, unless we've got other things lined up down the line to fund such a move. Is that the sort of calibre of goalkeeper you think Russell Martin would use to help play out from the back?
I don't see Ramsdale any better than Butland, being honest. I don't think goalkeepers are a priority for us. I don't think we actually really need to go out and, you know, break our heart over signing a new goalkeeper. What I think we need to do is actually put a better line of defence and a more consistent line in defence in front of the goalkeepers. Add that to the need to work on their distribution, because sometimes their distribution for both of them is absolutely atrocious. So that's something the individual need to work on themselves. But if you ask me, do we prioritise signing a goalkeeper this summer? No, I don't think it's a priority. I'm looking for a really good striker coming in to complement Dessers, to complement Egeman. I'm looking for somebody else to come in for that. We spoke about wingers there, and if we're going to be playing this high aggressive style of play, we've got to go for that. So goalkeepers for me, no, I wouldn't be. If they came back to me at the start of the season and said that Jack Butland's still the number one and Liam Kelly's the number two, I'm okay with that. But as long as we've recruited elsewhere to protect them.
What would be your priority position? Centre
halves. We're desperate for two good centre halves. John Souttar, I think's okay at times. I think he does all right. I still have worries about his fitness on occasion as well. So can he go out and play 60 games this season for us without missing at least 10 to 15 of those games? Probably not. I think his injuries worries are behind him, and I think we need to keep them behind him. We've obviously lost Balogun. We're going to lose Proper. We've lost, you could argue, Sterling's part of the centre half. Cashy there, NCL is still developing. So urgently we need two good centre halves. Ben Davies, I think, will go out in this window as well. I don't think it's a place for him at Ibrox. But there's lots of guys being mentioned. There's the boy for Swansea. Is it Harry? What's his surname again?
Darling.
Yeah. He's been widely touted. Russell Martin will be aware of him. The boy Burgess, who's out of contract at Ipswich, will be aware of him as well. He's left-sided as well, which will help the balance of the team. So there's plenty of players out there that, you know, I think could be quite interesting in coming to us, but obviously remains to be seen. But I would be looking to get 3, if not 4, new centre halves into the building.
Ross, you touched on again the collaborative side in his press conference that he had. Do you think he will go and get a tried and tested, something that he knows that he can trust to bring up here, somebody he can, you know, I know that people, whenever they talk about him, they speak highly of him and that he's a good man motivator, and the people will run through brick walls for him, and that's something obviously you want to see any Rangers player do for their manager but the team and the fans as well. Do you think that's something you'll try to bring in?
Yeah, and I have heard from a reliable source that he's already contacted Todd Cantwell. So I'm joking, chat. I'm joking before you slam your laptops or computers or phones into the wall. I am joking. But no, look, I do think he will do that. I think he'll go back to players that he trusts and knows well. I know that there's players like Walker Peters who have played a certain style of play. I floated the question in the chat the other day, would Rabbi Matondo be able to be morphed into a right back similar to a Frimpong, which is maybe not defensively defense doesn't necessarily need to be his key attribute, but maybe providing more of an offensive one. Not sure it's the answer, but maybe he'll be looking at alternative options like that. I think we've had sort of links in the past to people like Stuart Armstrong. Maybe he'll look at someone like that's got a bit of a few years under his belt and understands how a team ticks, especially in Scotland. It would be obviously a bit of a controversial one. But yeah, I think there'll be players that he wants to bring on board that say, I know exactly how I play, because he'll need leaders on the pitch, right? He'll need people that in those tough moments that he can go, I need you to be vocal. I need you to tell them exactly what I need. You know what I need. We're throwing a team together very quickly here. I do think there'll be enough players in our team, though, when you look at people, the intelligence of our team. I think Barron will fit in the system well. I think Raskin will fit in the system well. Potentially Jeff Day as well, as that kind of inward directing kind of left back. I think he could probably fit well within that sort of setup and rhythm. Needs to work on his defensive elements a lot more. I think we'd all agree on that. And I think Dessers will probably stay as that target man. Now, maybe he wants a bit more from his number 9. I think we'll probably all do want a bit more from a finishing point of view, but actually a bit more work off the ball and competency at keeping the ball into feet a bit more. I think that's where Dessers misses out. But there's no doubt he'll look at players that he trusts and have kind of gone on the journey with him. It'll be interesting to see. For me, I'm looking at maybe some of the Southampton youth that came through. I think there's a lad called Smallbone who came through, who was a player that played under him, and I think he's spoken very highly of him as a young English talent coming through. So potentially someone like that, I would definitely be looking to get on board. Like we said before Clement came in, though, you look at that Rangers team and you do question, where are the leaders? Where are the experienced players? Where are the ones that have done it before? So maybe that's what he needs to do. We thought Propper would be the man for that, and clearly he was unable to kind of get up to speed in Scotland. But yeah, I think he'll need to bring leaders on, and why not bring them on from teams that he's coached before?
Billy, as Ross there's talking about leaders, the one name that seems to be quite credible that's been linked is Conor Cody. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, he, by all accounts, I think he got quite a good rep amongst the England team for being, quite a good leader, despite, not being, maybe one that's been there for the longest. And I think like someone that would give us another good couple of seasons and be that kind of leading voice, a la Goldson. Hopefully that's not offending anyone, but someone who can be a leader. I think we're going to need 2 or 3 of these type of guys at that age profile, maybe over the 30-year-old mark, because I expect us to bring in the majority of these players are going to be on the younger side. So they need to be able to start for definite. They're not going to. I don't mean just get guys in the dressing room that can shout. Whatever, these guys are going to need to be ones that play in the park. But without knowing too much about Cody, other than I know he was a good player, that's the kind of profile I would like to bring in. That he's not over the hill. He's not 35, 36. He would give us a good couple of seasons and be that kind of transferring or taking the baton off of Tav and moving it on to whoever the next person is that comes in and takes over that kind of main leadership captain role. Because obviously, I don't believe Tav should be here after the end of next season. So yeah, if not him, someone in that with that experience playing at the Premier League level that's maybe available to us.
You've said the word Tav, and we know that's a touchy subject. I don't want to go down
there. Yeah, in the comments a few times.
I don't want to go down the Tav route. Ryan, we're going to go down the Tav route briefly.
All right, cheers.
Just
that's a grenade.
Just yes or no. Round the 3 is Tav for captain. Yes or no? Next season, new management, new manager.
Yes, but he doesn't play every week.
Oh,
Ross?
You've took the words out of my mouth, Ryan. Yes, but as a club captain, yes. But I do think I think Raskin will take that leadership off him if Raskin's still here when Tav's on the bench. I do think that'll be the lie of the land.
Yeah. Billy?
I'm a yes purely on it's his last season. I think he's due a testimonial. He's certainly in that ballpark, and it would just be a needless kind of humiliation of him to take it off him at this stage. But with 1 year left to go in his contract for how long he's been here, and as you say, if he's not going to play all the games, it's not a big deal because he's not going to be on the park. So whoever the de facto captain is, we'll get to find that out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's at that stage. He's earned the right, and as it's a testimonial year. You don't want to do that to him because he's been a fantastic servant for the club. And I'm seeing somebody in the comments here said a sort of like a Henderson role where he would maybe start coming off more to bleed in other players into the team, and then the captain armband gets swapped over. And as Ross says, ideally I'm in the same boat. I'd love it to be Raskin because I just think he knows. He just knows what it takes to be a Rangers captain. He showed that in the matches that he's had under Ferguson, and he's not given us any reason to doubt why he couldn't be a great Rangers captain going forward. I don't want to sit and keep harping on about potential transfers because we're in this murky sort of lull where it's player everybody's away off, and I think a lot of the folk out there that are writing these articles are just using Rangers' name as a sort of jump post for other clubs to get their finger out and try sign players, aren't they? Because we're such a big name. We talked about the style of play. Then let's talk about the man himself. Ross, I'll come to you. In his first press conference, what did you get from him?
I think the key thing for me was unfinished business.
Yeah,
that's the main thing that I got. He strikes me as someone who's not an aggressive person or a sort of intimidating person. I don't get that impression from him. I get an impression that he is very, very driven though, and probably quite a deep thinker in the way he processes things. So I think he's probably looked at this opportunity and his time that he spent at Rangers and they don't, there's a real chance for him to make a name for himself as a Rangers legend. And he said one thing that stuck with me. He said that he had always felt, even during his playing career, that he was destined to be a manager, which I think is a really interesting thing to say. You think footballers in that, in the sort of the adrenaline of day-to-day matches on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, whatever it would be, you'd think that they would be so focused on that. But it was really interesting that he said, I always felt I was going to be a manager. I quite liked that. I think there's a lot of it that's unknown. There was at times where I thought he looked a little nervous, which he's stepping into the bubble again, which is nerve-wracking for anyone. I was actually reflecting on it, and he's only 5 years older than me, which makes me feel very old. But he's got a big expectation on his shoulders now, and that'll take time for him to process. That'll take time for him to come to terms with. I think he spoke well. I think he definitely communicated what he wanted to say. I think came across well, and I think we all left with a similar image of him as a person and what he wants to achieve. Yeah. I would like a bit more detail on a few things, but I guess he's probably not in the know at the minute in terms of roles and responsibilities, in terms of kind of initial first focus. What are you doing first? How are we going to kickstart this season, and how does that look? What does success look like in the first 6 months for you? But all those questions will be answered, I'm sure. But overall, I thought he came across well. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think we all get behind him. I'm sure we will.
Billy, he said that it was about finding a way to win early as this project basically begins. Do you think he's going to get patience? I know somebody said that he's already 1-0 down, and I think that rings true. I think it will be a sort of baptism of fire. I think the first couple of games at Ibrox, whether it be friendly or Champions League qualifiers or league game, do you think he'll be able to do it?
I mean, from what he said in his initial press conference and the kind of follow-up interview that I've seen with him, he says the right things. Where I feel a wee bit ashamed of myself and a wee bit ashamed of the fan base, that he looked like he knew fine well that the air had been sucked out of the fans after the the takeover, that he was the manager now and not a bigger name or whatever. And I felt a bit like that's on us for making him kind of feel like that. So he is starting. He knows he's starting 1-0 down, I guess, is probably the point I'm trying to make, because he addressed it in his initial press conference. So, and he's not likely to get an easy away game for the first game of the season. It will be in one of those teams with a plastic pitch, or it will be 12 o'clock in Ross County or something like that on the first day. It will be, that's conspiracy me coming out now. It will be a difficult game, and where I think that he is onto a kind of winner to a degree is that these owners don't care at the moment. They're not going to start listening to us complaining after 2 or 3 games. I think you could compare it slightly, and I know Ryan has mentioned his name previous on this episode, but Ange at Celtic, when he didn't have a great start, and Gerrard was ahead of him in the league, but they just went on a run where they never lost a game for 25 games in a row. But they didn't have a great start, and I actually expect that to kind of be we're going to have a bit of a learning curve for the players. They're going to have to get used to this style of play. The good thing is we need so many coming in that will not have so much scar tissue that maybe would have had with previous managers having mostly the same team. So it's the fans might get on his back, but I think he's got the benefit of the owners now that are there, that they're going to give him time. They're away in America. They'll not have to worry about hearing it. I'm sure they'll come to games, but they're not going to have to be under the same pressure that this board were, who were waking up every day with the same newspapers or headlines, and they were getting the stick for the kind of managerial side. So do I think he's going to do it? I'm obviously hopeful, but it's I don't think it's a year away again. I think he knows he's kind of coming at it from a position where he's going to have to win the fans over. So he'll be using that as motivation as well. But one thing I would say as well is he talks really well. Much better. I don't know if I heard them. To be honest, when he was with us, I know he played for Scotland. I didn't realise he had an English accent. The first time I've heard him speak was his press conference. I assumed he was Scottish, having played for Scotland. I don't remember him giving interviews, but yeah, he spoke really well about how he wants to play, and that got me on board.
Billy, I can't believe you don't think these American orders are going to be tuning into Clyde One Super Scoreboard and listening and reading the Daily Record and getting.
Crazy as that sounds, mate. No, I think they'll be more attuned to their Fox News and CNN and all that stuff over there.
Ryan, I think what thing we can take from this the takeover group that are at Leeds is that whenever they get their man, they do stick with him, as we've seen with your boy Farke at Leeds. So I think us fans will need to sort of accept that he is going to be here and he is going to be given time. Now, one thing I've seen somebody post online, and I thought it was quite telling. What they said was, if we'd go in for Ancelotti, we would have to sit and watch him make the same mistakes that Gerrard made when he came in, because he was a young manager. But hopefully Martin will have made those mistakes at his Southampton, Swansea and MK Dons, and he won't make these kind of mistakes. I thought that kind of rung true. What about yourself?
Yeah. One of the kind of more positive things I've taken from Martin is that we've often spoken on the podcast, and you've seen social media channels, that people are looking for Rangers to bring back a British identity, a Scottish and a British identity back to the club. If Ancelotti had been our man, how much of a British identity do you think we would have had in 6 months to 12 months' time? Probably next to none. He's probably going to be scouring markets that he's familiar with, your Italian leagues, your French, your Spanish, your German leagues, tapping into contacts to sign talent that he knows about. Whereas guys like us would be sitting here saying, why did he not sign Josh Mulligan? Why did they not sign Lawrence Shankland? Why did they not sign Lennon Miller? So I think we've maybe just got to give him that chance and hope that he scours the markets that we believe he should be looking at, and buying players within the domestic league and buying the top talent Lauren Shankland, we believe, is on the verge of West Brom, but are they using West Brom as leverage to try and get Rangers to push deal and get there? I don't think Ancelotti was saying Lauren Shankland. I don't even think Ancelotti would have heard of Lauren Shankland. But I know for a fact Russell Martin would have heard of Lauren Shankland before. And I think that's somebody we should be keenly looking at. A guy that's, a proven goal scorer in our league, a guy that we all know is Rangers daft and who would probably walk over broken glass in the M8 to sign for us. So there's certain pros and cons to it. But I think that kind of British side of things is the kind of main positive I'm taking from it, that it'll be known, that you'll know the leagues that we need to be looking in to get, instant success. Because if we are looking at Ancelotti signing project players and Ancelotti being a project manager himself, we've not got 3 years to get this turned round. I mean, are we sitting here in a situation where we're trying to stop 10 in a row again? No. We're sitting here in a situation where we're probably only about 5 or 6 half-decent games within a season to be actually talking about title challenges again. So we've got to do it. We've got to set ourselves targets that I always say at the start of a season, a 30-game season, that we should be looking to achieve 90 points. And if we can get ourselves up to 90 points, then we're on the dance floor and we'll see what else takes it. That's usually enough to either be there or thereabouts come the end of the season. But we've actually lost the league when Bill was the manager, when we achieved 90 points and we still didn't win it. So, but that's realistically why I would class as success if we get ourselves to 90 points next season, regardless of league position at the end of it. If we can achieve 90 points, I would regard that as being a decent year for us.
Would that be this incoming season, or would you allow him a season of settling in, and then the second season you go hell for leather and you're up there, and you maybe take cups in the first season, or at least final appearances?
That's what I would expect this season, mate, because at 90 points you've dropped 24. There's 114 points up for grabs. So you've dropped 24 points over the course of the season, which could involve losing every single Old Firm game, which could involve losing points at Tynecastle, Easter Road and stuff. So 90 points is what I'm looking at. The season after that, if you're talking about progression, I'm talking about going for 100 points and really going for it. And that's the year we won 55. I think we finished on 102 points that year. So that for me that's steamrolling the league if you can get up to triple figures. But 90 is what I would expect going forward. So we'll see what we can do.
Ross, Gordon makes a good point there with making Ibrox a place we don't lose. We did have a torrid time this season at Ibrox, both domestically and in the cup competitions. Europe, we did as usual. We always seem to do not too bad, but it hits nail on the head for me. We need to turn Ibrox into a fortress again.
100%. Look, the reason that Rangers exist is for the fans, and the fans go to Ibrox, and that's our home. That should be our fortress. Whether that's in Europe, whether that's in domestically, whether it's in the in the cup competitions, that has to be. We've talked so many times about the basics of winning your home games, picking up points away from home, and trying not to drop points away from home. But every game at home, you need to be winning. That is your bread and butter. We're all sat here, year in, year out, excited about Europe, but still, you start talking about the league and we wince because it's painful because we haven't mastered the art of winning games against stubborn teams. It was the undoing of so many. It has been the undoing of so many managers, and we've proven that the team is capable because we've gone out in Europe and really outplayed higher quality teams than we play week in, week out. But then you come up against your Queen's Parks and St Mirren's, and we look like we've not got a clue. For me, that is about the setup. That is about the way that the team is set up to play. One thing I think I would like to see from Martin, just on that, is a bit of flexibility. Now, I know that's not something that he's necessarily famed for, but I do think that you have to be pragmatic. When you're playing against St Mirren, play two up top. Create trouble in the defence. The amount of times this season where we just saw Dessers isolated as a 9, and they've just got four players at the back and 2 sat in front, and we're all in front of them. And you've got Jeff Day trying to whip a ball in, and it's just an aimless task. I'm hoping that the dynamic sort of fitness and movement that Martin brings in will help unlock it. But I would like to also see a bit of pragmatism where you put two big strikers in, and you make it really difficult, and you commit players forward, and and I think he will be risky with the way he plays. I think he will be overloading that final third, which is something that is potentially something that we've missed. But I did laugh when you said there, should we give him a year? Well, we all said Clement last year was the year of the rebuild, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, how many rebuild years can we have here before it becomes a rebuild decade? And it's being rebuilt every year in a different direction. You need to stick with someone. I know it's so easy to say that, but I do think we need to grin and bear it. And there'll be tough times. There always is. But I think overall, what is the direction that he wants to take him in? And as I said before, Vincent Kompany for me is a real similar comparison here, in the sense that Burnley got relegated, but he was very clear and defined in the way he wanted to play football. And Bayern saw in him a manager that would be able to play football at a team that is more dominant and will be naturally more competent in each player's role in the position and on the pitch. So I think that's what Rangers have spotted, and Rangers have seen that that's probably where Russell Martin would be at his best if he's got a team of players that are trying to break down rather than to defend as a stout unit. Yeah, look, there's so many unknowns, and we're all just sort of speculating here, but it's a real interesting one for me.
I think you're right, and this is a point we're at. We're all speculating until we get our first pre-season game and we see what the formation sets, and then you can see what he's obviously tried to implement on the training ground is it St George's Park they're going to? Is that what it is? England training place. So he's going down to these world-class elite facilities, and he's going to have a core of players there that obviously we'll hope they'll add to. Billy, what are you really expecting then from this pre-season? Do you think it'll be a case of him trying to implement his style of play on quite soon, quite early on, or from the get-go, or do you think is he going to embed it in and try and tailor it to what we have at the moment, and then break it in bit by bit?
No, I think he'll want to implement his style of play from day one, and I think probably what he'll be focusing on in this pre-season will be fitness and working on that side of things, because it's quite clear that we didn't have the legs, or don't have the legs to do. Certainly, this last 2 seasons, teams didn't have the legs to do what he's going to want them to do, which is, it's been touched on earlier in the pod, but I think that's what we'll be working on. So I would expect to see maybe some tired legs in these games, because they'll be getting worked quite a lot when the games aren't on their fitness levels. But hopefully that all that work will hopefully that pays off for us. If I can just address something Ross said a few minutes ago, this is the first Rangers manager that I'm actually older than, so that's a bit annoying. But I guess it happens to us all at some point, but not by much.
Somebody in the chat was asking us if us guys remembered back to Graham Souness coming in and the big revolution he had when he brought in all the British players, and I thought, you cheeky get, some of us aren't that old, but then maybe some of us are.
Graham who?
Ryan, you were talking on about the British identity there. Do you think that's going to be key for success under Russell Martin?
I don't think it'll be key for success, because we've had, European styles of teams that have been successful before, particularly under Advocat, where it was very much a multinational. Ferguson was the only kind of notable Scottish player that was in the team at that point. But I think the more kind of the British side of things is more returning back to basics for players that understand the demands and needs of the supporters, that can have an easier relationship with supporters. It's been growing for too long that we've had so many foreign players come in that frankly have just been not good enough, that have been stealing a wage. We could go back to some of the Caixinha signings that he had with your Peñas and your Herreras of this world. You could name every single manager and some of the calamities, and no manager is not guilty of that. So we've got to get ourselves back to basically getting an honest day's work and an honest day's professionalism out of these guys. And I think, going back to the basics of the Scottish and the British hard-working mentality will do that for us. Guys that are, willing to go out there, that you're maybe not 100%, back to the days of Bomber Brown with half his Achilles hanging out his leg, but he's willing to go out there and win 4 in a row for Rangers against Aberdeen, which is not long after Souness left, after you're speaking about there. Rather than guys coming out there saying that they're tight, I'm just not quite feeling it today, and I'm just not going to go out there. Mate, you're picking up thousands and thousands of pounds a week. There's folks sitting up there in the stand that need you to win today, and you're coming in and you're telling me you're just not quite feeling good enough. No, for me, it's not there. Days like this, days like that, and players like that need to go. And there's guys that are in the building just now that are like that. You know, your Rabbi Matondos of this world, for example, picking up £28,000 a week is probably only paid maybe 4 or 5 decent games for us. These guys need to go as soon as possible. And unfortunately, he's actually one of the British players that we've got in the building, but you could go on about it, guys that have just been basically picking up wages, that have just been robbing us blind. So we need to stop that. And I think having that kind of British, you know, Scottish mentality will hopefully put an end to that.
Yeah, I think in saying that, I do think he's got good track record of bringing youth players up from basically either the academies or from other teams and giving them a platform. And I do think we might see some youth players in this current youth team get a fair chance, particularly in pre-season, because obviously we don't have the players might not be in place that we want to be in place yet. So we'll have to fill those sort of slots with pre-season players, with players from the academy. Ross, do you see players like Bailey Rice and the young boy Finlay Curtis getting their chance under him?
I do, yeah, I definitely do. I think there's a root and branch issue here with the academy anyway. So I still think there is too much of a jump between a Finlay Curtis and the first team. From what I've seen of him in particular, I don't want to pick on him as just one player, but in general, I do think there is a systemic issue with not having the players at the right stage in the right, you know, physical condition or whatever it will be. And look, even this relates to style of play, right? You look at Liverpool and they are bred from the very, very youth teams to play a certain way. So when they get there, they're ready, and that's that. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe that's, if we're bringing a philosophy and a style and a way that we want to play as a team, then maybe that's what has to happen. And then that would allow them then more of a pathway through. Because yes, I think Bailey Rice is a player that has done well. He's come in, he's looked steady away. I wouldn't say he's kind of looked an incredible player, but you know, certainly someone that I think has potential. But I do think you know we need to get more youth into the into the setup, because you look at what is a player trading model. Well, the cheapest way to do it is to bring your own through, you know, and sell them on, like kind of Nathan Patterson as one example. That was perfect for the player trading model. You know, essentially a £16 million net profit in essence, apart from his kind of development fees, whatever it will be, throughout the years. So yeah, I would like to see it, but I'm just still unsure that they're at that level yet to play. There's no one that I'm screaming out for to go, this guy needs a game, this guy needs a game, this guy. Yeah. And look, you saw it when Hadji went and played at that level, right? He was tearing it up, comes into the first team and sort of looks okay. So I do think there is a big gulf, and I think hopefully with this new setup and ownership and structure, it will allow for higher quality players who are ready and chomping at the bit, and therefore will be given the chance.
Billy, as we're touching on there, the sort of integration of the youth players into the team, especially probably going to be, you probably see a lot of that over the pre-season games. How do you think that'll go for a player like Bailey Rice? Do you think he will get more game time, as Ross alluded to there? Do you want him to get more game time? Do you think, like Ross, he's just not quite that level yet, but he could be, and we need to sort of push him further on, or do you think it may be better going on loan? Do start the pre-season with us, then go on loan?
I don't want to disagree strongly with Ross, because he's not like he came in and he's clearly a £50 million player, but I thought he came in and played really well when he's been involved. Not used enough, especially under Barry either. So I would like to have seen more of him. He's probably going to get the game time in the pre-season games, as you mentioned, mate. But if he isn't in the manager's plans, we do need to be getting these players either sold for something, you know, to start making money out of the youth side, or going out on loan, like you say. There's no point in him sitting around for another season when there's players at other teams. You know, you've got a player at Motherwell who's valued at over £5 million now. Would it not be better for one of the players to go and play for another team and get in the shop window at least, rather than sitting and coming on, you know, in some games, or coming on for some strange reason in the Europa League at Old Trafford and not getting a game at the weekend after that? It's a strange way to use them. If they're good enough to be in the squad, they should be getting used on match days in the Premier League as well. So if he's not going to be involved, he needs to go somewhere else, either permanently or on loan, mate.
Ryan, as Billy touched on there's a player at Motherwell that's sitting there that's around the same age. But as we all know, we're all led to believe that Billy Rice was the more higher rated player, but he ended up coming to us. Do you think? I know did Lennon Miller start the Scotland game today? I think he did. Was in the starting lineup. I think he did.
He was.
Is he somebody you want to see? Would he fit your sort of player trading model? Bring him in. Yes, granted, we're paying quite a big outlay for a Scottish player between two Scottish clubs, but he's got that ceiling, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, as long as they can structure the deal sensibly, that Motherwell aren't going to get too excited over his asking price. I don't think £5 million for a player from Motherwell, it's great for them, don't get me wrong, but for us, I don't think we'd be looking to pay £5 million. I think you've got to kind of structure it in such a way that it's based on number of appearances. We'll give him a few quid if he gets sold on at a decent level as well. Scotland appearances, us win the league, us qualify for this, qualify for that. But you've got to look at Lewis Ferguson, who also started tonight, that how many of us would love to see him in a blue jersey. And, apparently everyone said that he wasn't good enough. And when Aberdeen, I think, were looking for £3 million from, we couldn't give Aberdeen £3 million for Lewis Ferguson. You need to probably pay £30 million to get Lewis Ferguson back to Ibrox now. So it's relatively low risk as far as, money's concerned there if you can structure it properly, as I said. But, you've got to make sure the boy gets a chance as well, because you look at Bailey Rice, who's possibly sitting next to him, who was meant to be the pick of the two. Bailey Rice was meant to be the one that had higher potential and can't get a sniff. So if you sign these boys and you're willing to there, and you're basically, you don't want to rob them of their futures as well, because these guys could be going away and doing far better things than us. So it's a hard one to do, but there's so many reasons to do it, and there's a couple of reasons not to do it. If we do lose Diamandi and we do lose Raskin, which is quite heavily rumoured to do, that's a no-brainer as far as reinvesting back into the squad's concerned, because you're probably looking around about £30 million if you lose the two of them, and a proportion of that goes towards someone like Lennon Miller, and you go out and look for another two players as well. You lose two of your better ones, you sign four, and if three of them are good and one of them's not good, so be it. That's the nature of football.
Ross, Thelwell has a very good track record down at Everton. Granted, as a Premier League team, he had to work with quite a restricted budget. We know he's going to have a restricted budget up here, but he's obviously going to be shopping in a different sort of bracket, different calibre. Do you think he'll be able to bring in players that we can use, obviously for success, but then get that player trading model up and running, because we are so far behind the other team in Glasgow in that respect?
Yeah, I think priority number one, and I think this is where there's probably a bit of a shift at Ibrox now. Priority number one is to win games. That has to be priority number one. No longer player trading, no longer looking 5 years down the line at resale. If we can bring in a blend of experience and youth, which I think Clement was starting to try and do, albeit on a even tighter shoestring, then I think that's probably the direction we'll go. Celtic have got money because they've won so many leagues and they've entered the Champions League. That's it. I don't think their player trading model has been, I mean, they've had a few big ones, you look at Jota and things like that, but we've had a few big ones as well, Bassey and Patterson and a few other players that have been sold for, high amounts. So I wouldn't say the light years ahead from that point of view, but it's just winning games, Jock. I think we just have to get back into a habit of winning titles again and again, getting into the Champions League again and again. That the amount of money that you get for entering the Champions League is like, 2-3 big sales for us. So yes, they're good and they will supplement us. And I think more than anything, they will make us as a beacon for young talent, because they will see the progressional route. And I think that is probably worth more to us than actually the resale value of those players. Yeah. So if I was the board, if I was the thing, I think I'd say that the intention right now has to be win games, win trophies, win leagues. We start doing that. You start then looking at how you can bring other players in and stuff. But I do think, based on the players that are being linked with, they are looking at a blend. You look at the lad Turgaman from Israel. I think he would definitely be someone that would be getting just at the right time, sort of before maybe the big move, which is great. Obviously, Igaman falls into that bracket as well. But these are the markets we will have to shop in, and I think rightly so. You know, I don't think we're ever going to be competing with some of the big players in Europe for the talent that's coming out of Germany or Italy or wherever it would be. And we're never going to be playing in those. I think maybe we look at, you know, sort of academy players in there and give them a platform like Nsiala. But certainly a blended of mature, experienced players and players who have high potential will be the way forward. And I think that's the route that everyone would like to see us go down, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The days of Rangers going to, like you say, Germany and Italy and picking up, you know, a player that's well respected and is, you know, is demanding big fees are just over now. That's well and truly gone, and we do have to look around Europe to the lesser leagues to pick up the gems. Billy, as Ross said there, we have to maybe take our eye off other things and focus on winning games and winning trophies. Would you gladly sacrifice European performances for that, just to get on our sort of run of winning trophies and cups?
And I guess I'll answer it from my own perspective. Yes, that's more important to me. I don't think it's more important to this new board, though. I think they want to get return on their investment, and the Champions League is the only real place they're going to be able to achieve that. So I think they will prioritise the European side without obviously not, you know, turning their nose up at the league. But I think if they kind of can go hand in hand, can't they? If you end up going, you know, winning a couple of leagues, you get to the Champions League, obviously, hopefully with that automatic place as comes back, or we get there fairly easy, and then, you know, they go hand in hand. So I'm sure they'll be looking at it from the bigger picture. But for me, yeah, I mean, it's extremely frustrating. We haven't won the league since '55. Put it that way. It's frustrating to see a record now being equalled as well with league titles. These are things that don't sit well with the regular Rangers fan, and we're going to the only way we can address that is to start winning titles and cups again.
That's it. Like you say, we were so far ahead for quite a long time, and that's been diminished, which feels quite quickly. We've been through so much in such a short space of time, haven't we, as a fan base? Ryan, I'll come to you then. We'll just go around the houses because we're nearly at the end of the hour. Just what would be your ideal first season under Russell Martin look like?
90 points, one of the cups, and a dent in Europe of some sort. I do have concerns if we get into the Champions League, and obviously the riches and stuff like the boys spoke about. But if we go into the Champions League at this early stage, you could find ourselves getting a right good few scuddings. If you see what happens, we've seen it happen across the road. It's happened to ourselves. Obviously, Liverpool coming to Ibrox in the year that we won the Champions League, we could beat 7-1 at home.
Yeah.
And how much pressure would that put on Russell Martin if we're going out in Europe and getting absolutely tanked every single time we do it? Because probably 3/4 of the teams that are going to be in that Champions League would fancy themselves against us, and there'll be a kind of a pot of maybe about 7 or 8 that we think we can compete against. But I'd be worried that we could get after there. Don't get me wrong, we love to hear the Champions League music coming back to Ibrox and some of the stadiums around Europe that we'll have the opportunity to go and travel to, and easier paths to go to as well. Some of the weird and wonderful journeys that we've been on over the years to get to the European games. But I would take it with a caveat that we just need to take it as a bonus and take the money and just put it in the bank and enjoy the football as much as we possibly can and not focus too much on the results. So if it's Champions League, so be it. If it turns out to be Europa League, I'd be looking for qualification from that again. If we could get back into the top 8 of that again, if it does happen to be Europa League, 90 points, one of the cups, that'd be fine. And a wee bit of good business as far as transfers are concerned as well.
I think you're right. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Ross, just your closing thoughts and what you expect from the first season, or what would you like?
Oh, they're two very different things.
Exactly.
Glad you clarified that for me. What I would like and what I would accept are probably the same thing. If I'm being honest, we have to win the league. That is it. I would take us getting into the Champions League. I would love to see us get in the Champions League primarily for the money and just write off Europe this season. That'd be great. Just write it off. Play the youth team, whatever. Just take the money and run. You pick up one or two, results at Ibrox where the fans are behind us, and you pick up a scalp here or two. That'd be nice as well. But I'd just take that. It has to be the league. I don't care about the cups. It has to be the league. I'm sick of watching them lift that trophy, and I think we all are. So for me, it has to be the league. All focus on the league. Ignore Europe. Ignore these tantalizing little bits. If we can get through in the Champions League, fantastic. Take the money from it. If we drop into Europe, maybe that's a slightly different game. But I still think league has to be it. We've got to win it this year. We have to win it.
Billy?
Yeah, I agree with Ross on that one. The league is, it's first and foremost for me. That's why we watch the season every year. I mean, the cups for me are a nice kind of sideshow. Certainly, if we and under some pressure in the league, it's nice to get in the cup. What used to be until Queen's Park knocked us out, but it used to be you can enjoy a cup game. But I'm regards Ryan and mentioning the Champions League, I'm not as fearful now that this new setup is there. It doesn't seem to be as dreadful as the 4 teams in a group, and you're against Inter Milan, Liverpool, or some other big hitter. There will be a couple of teams in there we should be hopefully do well, but it's not my priority. My priority would still be concentrating, fully focused on all the. I don't know what's the word. All your skill set being set towards the league. The way we set the team up has to be for winning the league. The way we bleed players in has to be regarding the league, not Europe.
No, I agree. I think league's a priority for me this season. It's about bleeding in this new system and his ideas and getting it into the players' head and into the players' legs, fitness, camaraderie, knowing the system, knowing what each player has to do, where they have to be to get this new system that this guy's going to bring into. Get it into playing so we can see how it fares in this league. So for me, it'd be the league. Thanks for joining us, guys. I know I've been a wee bit. Go ahead, Ryan.
Just want to say a happy 40th birthday to Dino as well, one of the podders.
Yeah,
his 40th birthday today, so.
Well, he doesn't look it, does he?
He does not, does he? Not at all.
Not at all. So,
folks, Dino's usually the guy doing our Rangers journal shorts on TikTok and Facebook and stuff. If you want to head over and have a wee laugh and wish me a happy birthday. Just before I go, I'd just like to say thanks to the guys for joining us, and I just give a shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, which is off to the matchigo.co.uk, where if you buy anything or you're in your basket, put the code Journal10, that'll get you a 10% discount off all the products on the website. So thanks again to Ross, Ryan and Billy for joining us, and just remember, every night is a rain.